Hi everyone, welcome to Photoshop Lab 4. Today you're going to need these 4 files here. We have model, rainbow dance, brick wall, and blank cards. Today we're going to be practicing using the brush tool a little bit more. We're always going to keep using adjustments. We'll practice some blending modes on layers. We're going to use the blur filter, and I'm going to teach you how to use free transform. Now, once you've downloaded those files, we're going to kind of reenact a scenario where you have a client who has given you an example image. This is your example image, rainbow dance. This is what they would like an image to look like for themselves. So they've provided you with this reference. Now it's kind of small. It's only about 370 pixels wide, and so you can already tell that it's really pixelated. But what's important is that we see some of the main visual features. All right, so in this case, we would say that our client provided the image of themselves, the model, and then they asked us to go ahead and source the other images. So we're going to use this white brick wall and place them there. First things first, let's get our reference image over into our white brick wall image. I'm going to unlock this layer. And then using our move tool, or hotkey V, we can go ahead and pick that layer up, drag it up into white brick wall, and back down into our program. Very, very small image compared to the size of image we're going to create here. All right, let's go ahead and name this reference so we don't forget what that layer means. And now let's bring our model into the image as well. I'm using hotkey V, that move tool, and I better unlock my layer. And we'll bring model into the white brick wall. Oh, perfect. Okay. Now I'm just going to eyeball this and bring the model down to the bottom here. And I don't want to put them dead center. I actually appreciate just a little bit of asymmetry. Keeps it feeling very organic. All right, we'll name this layer model. And we're going to put it behind the reference. We're going to make sure the reference is on top at all times so we can just turn it right off and see everything going on underneath it. That's what we're going to start with. Later we will bring in the blank card and we'll actually mock up some marketing materials for our client onto these blank cards. But let's start by building our actual image. All right, so just a good practice is always to get copies of your original layers. That way, if you make too many changes and need to go back and get some original pixel information, you can. So let's see, I'm just going to drag those copies down here. I'm going to group them and just name the group original. Now, group was that hotkey, Command G. If you're on a PC, that would be Control G. All right. All right, so one of our first challenges is bringing in these extra bits of color, these kind of shadows that were cast by colored lights. We don't have a path for our model, but what we do have is, I'm going to turn off these other layers really quickly, is we have a bunch of transparent information, all right? It's kind of an oxymoron, transparent information. Space filled with not space. In a couple of our selection tools, they only have the capacity to select pixels. So if we brush those tools over all this transparent space, they can't actually hold on to it. So they will suck into whatever pixels are in the layer that we have selected. Go ahead and make sure you have that layer selected. We're going to get this quick selection tool right here. And I'm going to change the size of my tool by hitting that right bracket key. And then I'm just going to brush really big over the whole image, make sure that I've clicked over the whole image. And then when I release my click, you're going to see my selection suck right into the edges of the pixels. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, now we want this shape because this shape is going to be how we create those colored shadows. We don't want to do anything on the models layer, so we're going to create a new layer. Let's go ahead and name this one Should we call this one red? Red shadow. And I'm going to move it behind the model. I'm going to turn on my reference layer now. Because I would like to eyedrop that red color so that I can paint it into this selection, but paint it in on my red shadow layer. All right, so I'm going to hit I for eyedropper. I'm going to click this red. And then, while I'm in my red shadow layer still, and I have red selected, I'm going to hit B for brush. The brush that I have loaded was from a previous lecture. It's just my software and brush. You can use any brush you like right now. It really won't matter here in a minute. But go ahead and make your tool nice and big and paint in, oops, I'm not going to be able to see a thing if my shadow layer is below my model. Paint in at 100% opacity that red color. All right. Now, let's start turning on some other layers. We can start seeing it interacting with our other pixel information. Let's turn on our brick. And now we can actually deselect. We can Command D or Control D. And the red shadow, kind of turns pink there on the edge, occurs to the right and slightly lower than the model themselves. It will also be blurred. So let's start with the blurred. I want you to come up to Filter, down to Blur, and we're going to select Gaussian Blur. And with this little pop-up menu, we're going to determine the radius of the blur, how sharp that happens. I'm going to say it's going to be around, it's not going to be less than 5 or more than 10. I think I like 6 pixels. Now remember, you can always deselect and reselect preview to check on your changes. And then I'm going to hit OK. The next thing we're going to do, let's move it behind the model. So we're going to grab that whole layer, click and drag it behind our model. And now we need to transform it in a way so it feels like it's being cast downwards. All right, so I'm going to actually first pause before we do any of that. Let's get some copies of this because we're going to use it for our blue and our yellow as well. Let's copy red and name this one blue shadow. And we'll copy blue shadow and name it yellow shadow. Turn both of those off for just a second. All right, now with red shadow, the one that is visible, selected, let's transform this to be casting lower. So we're going to use our transform hotkey, Command T, or Control T if you're on a PC. And now usually, if you grabbed anywhere on the bounding box with this tool, you're going to transform it with the original proportions intact. All right, it's going to have the same width and height ratio. We don't want that. We want to be able to kind of squish this and pull it around. We can do that by holding down. So I want you to start your transformation. So start by clicking and dragging, and then I want you to hold down your Command key if you're on a Mac or your Control key if you're on a PC. And you'll notice that you can now kind of shear and stretch that shadow. All right. Make it a little bit shorter. And I'm going to call that done. So as soon as I'm done with all my transformation, I'm just going to hit enter. Next, I want this pixel information, the red shadow, to be interacting with the pixels behind it, that brick wall. I want it to look like it's being cast onto that. So instead of using a normal blending mode, we are going to use one called linear burn. So there's our first shadow, and we will be able to get that mix where we get pink as well, but we're going to have to get our yellow shadow worked out first. So let's work on our yellow shadow. Go ahead and make that visible once more. let's first change it to be yellow. We're going to use our adjustments to do so. Image, adjustments, and then let's just go right to hue and saturation since this is a nice big change. And go ahead and drag that until you get, I dragged it the wrong direction, until you get a nice bright yellow. When you're done, hit OK. Let's change this one to also be linear burn. And let's transform it, Command T. Remember again, Control T if you're on a PC. All right, I'm going to want this one to come out a little bit further than my red. If we see kind of copying what's happening in our reference image, we have the red shadow, and then slightly outward from that we have our yellow. And then I'm going to, remember, start a transformation, then hold down my Command key in order to bring that a little bit, squish it further down. All right, when you're done, hit Enter to apply it, and we'll go for a blue shadow. And select your blue shadow layer. Again, we'll change its hue using our adjustments. We want a really, really bright cyan. There we go. And we'll change that blending mode for the layer from normal to linear burn. Let's transform it, Command T. This one comes out a little bit on the other side of our model. And then we'll start a transformation, hold down Command. Scooch it just a little bit this way. And hit Enter. I think I'm going to reorder these shadows a little bit. I wonder kind of how they'll interact differently. They might not, but it's always worth checking. All right, it doesn't look like it really affects one or the other. Their order doesn't necessarily matter. So the next thing we're going to want to do is get this overlap. So the overlap is what's red, and then what's not red is where this layer is independent. We are going to accomplish that by making a selection on one layer, kind of like we did with the model, and then making a change on another layer with that selection still loaded. All right, so on the yellow shadow layer, let's get our selection tool. Remember, this can only collect pixel information on the layer, so I'm going to brush over a lot of stuff, and when I let go of my click, it's going to suck in. Now, we'll go to our red shadow layer, and we don't want to change what's inside our selection right now. We want to change what's outside the selection, the inverse. So we'll go here to select an inverse. You can also do Shift Command I. And once we've done so, we have selected on the red shadow layer the outside of that shape. We can go to our adjustments, change that hue and saturation to that pink. Let's see, there we go, much better. Might even make it a little bit lighter or brighter. And then hit OK. So the red shadow now includes both red and pink information. We can hit Command D or Control D to release that. I think I want to adjust the size of my blue shadow a little bit. There's just a little bit much there appearing, so I'm going to hit Command T, and I think I'm just going to make it slightly smaller. Maybe I will grab this and then use my Command hotkey. Now, you can take this chance to adjust any of yours that you would kind of just like a slightly different shape on. Maybe smaller wasn't the way to go. I guess I don't know what I'm after right here. Let's see, I'm going to hit Escape so I can start over. TNT again. There we go. I think I just shouldn't have stretched it. I just needed to make it smaller. And then hit enter. Okay, so we've got some of the first steps here to replicating that reference image. Next, I think we're going to need to increase some saturation on the model themselves. There's wonderful skin tone, but now we have these really bright colors and we're going to brush in even more. You see these kinds of blushing in the corners. I think the model is going to have to be just a little bit more saturated and a little warmer. So let's go to the model layer and go to our adjustments. And let's start first with hue and saturation. If we need to change things a little more, we can go to color balance. But without changing the hue at all, let's just bump up the saturation in that layer. So we get much more warm yellows and oranges and skin tones. I think that's all we're gonna have to do, honestly. Just bump that up about 35 points and then we'll hit OK. That was a lot simpler than I thought it was gonna be. Yay us. Okay, let's now use the brush tool on some layers to brush in these nice colors, okay? We're going to need a brand new layer so that we're not painting on something else, so that if we need to adjust it later, we're not fighting. All right, so go ahead and let's start by making sure you have a big, soft, round brush. We don't want to have any hard edges to this brush stroke. And I'm going to start with this kind of red color because it seems to be what this corner is in our reference image. I'm just going to brush kind of a big, I kind of like my shape earlier, a little bit more scoopy. All right. Go ahead and brush in a little shape into that corner that is that red. All right, now next we're going to change this blending mode into multiply so we can see through to the bricks below. I'm going to change that opacity down. We don't want it to hit too hard. I also think I'm going to want it to fade a little bit more gradually, so I'm going to continue in this layer but with a less opaque brush. I'm going to brush it just a little bit more. See how that kind of softens the glow a little bit? It doesn't happen quite as fast as it did the first time. That's what I'm after. All right. Let's do the same thing with a purple because we're going to get this upper left corner of our reference image. All right, so a new layer. Go ahead and double click on your fill color. You can change that to be a purple. And then same deal, we'll just kind of, I guess it's better to start with a less opaque brush so you can get that nice gradual change. Go ahead and pop in some color in that corner. We'll change the layer blending mode again to multiply, but then we will pull back its opacity in case it's just a little bit too strong. Actually, having that now makes my red look really strong, so I'm going to pull the red back again too. All right, I should probably name these layers so I don't lose track of them. Isn't it fun to watch me type down there? Okay. Again, let's brush in this side here. We've got a slightly cooler blue up top and then a more teal cyan in the bottom. So we'll need a new layer. I will choose a cooler blue. Let's see, I didn't love that brush stroke very much, so I'm going to hit Control Z, get rid of it. All right, and we'll change that from normal to multiply and take back some of that opacity. Last corner, I better name that one. Ooh. I'll name this one cyan. And on cyan, Use our brush, big soft round brush. Throw some color in there. Oops, I don't want to take over my blue. And then change that from normal to multiply. And pull back the opacity just a little bit. All right, so now that I've painted these kind of four corners, these colors in, I do realize that with all the extra shadow shapes with my model, it is a little more heavy on the right. So let's move all of those layers, the model and their shadows, the blue, yellow, and red. Let's move all those slightly to our left. So we're going to select the model layer, we're going to hold down Shift, and then select all the way down to whichever shadow's on the bottom for you. And then we'll hit Command T or Control T if you're on a PC to move them all at once towards the center. And we'll hit Enter. I think I also would like them to appear above these colored brush strokes. So I'm going to click and drag those above. That way the red doesn't necessarily come over the model, or any of the brush colors don't start affecting the model's colors. Next, you see there's a little bit of a washed out glare area behind the model in our reference image. Kind of keeps our attention from getting too distracted with texture. We're going to create another layer then. So this is going to be, we'll put it above our cyan, we'll put it above all of our corner colors, but still below our model and their shadows. So this layer we'll just call Blowout, because we're going to kind of blow out the color behind the head. Let's go ahead and change this to white, a white brush. And I'm just going to get it a really, really big size using my bracket tool, and then just brush in white right there. So you can tell it's already blowing out that information. It is still in normal blending mode, and I don't want it to stay on normal because I'm not trying to opaquely paint over anything. I still want it to interact with the pixels below it. So we'll change it from normal to overlay. And again, if you've painted it really strong, you can take back that opacity to adjust it slowly. And then when you're finished, go ahead and leave it where it is. All right, another detail we're going to now adjust is the shadow colors on our model's shirt are still very neutral from the photo shoot. They don't really reflect any of the really fun colors that we've got going on here, or that we're trying to convince everybody are happening in the image. So let's select our model's pixels. So you're going to get on the model layer. We're going to use that quick selection tool to select the pixels of our model. But again, we're not going to paint on this layer. We're going to paint on a new one. Go ahead and get the new layer with that plus symbol there. And let's just call this shirt shadow. And we're going to choose a color that we've been kind of working around. It's kind of purpley color between the blue and the pink of your shadows. And then inside your shirt shadow selection, but on your shirt shadow layer, not your model layer, let's just paint, oops, use your brush, not your selection tool. I'm going to change the size of my brush. I'm just going to paint a little bit of purple into this area of the shirt. Now I might need to kind of back off on some of this. I might need to adjust how much actual brush stroke occurs, but I'd rather start with too much than too little. All right, I'm going to come in here on the shadows here. And on this layer, we're going to go from normal to color. All right, so it's going to stain pixels that I've brushed over with that color. Now it can't stain white, which is great because I want the white of the shirt not to turn purple. I want the white to remain white, but the shadows that I painted over to turn more of that purple. Now you can see I've hit a lot of the model's skin here on their underarms, so I'm going to have to use my eraser, and we'll actually have to make sure my eraser is also a soft tool so I don't have a hard edge. And I'm going to just try to brush out some of that from their skin so it doesn't give me away. Now we can turn that layer on and off so you can kind of see the difference. It helps the entire effect. Let's see if I just make my tool small, I can brush some of that back in. I don't want to lose it all. Make sure you get some of the shadows that occur on these little folds without turning their arm pink. Now the reason that we had our selection was so that our brush didn't come out here and start coloring the outside and the shadows as well. We just want it to stay right inside the model. All right, when you're done, hit Control D for deselect. I think we're done with all of our adjustments to our model. We've kind of replicated this reference image. The next thing we're going to do, so we want to provide our client with this image, this nice large image, and also with a mock-up of how it's going to look printed on cards. We can hide our reference image now. We don't need to see it anymore. Let's now group all of these layers that we've just worked with. So this is our model, their shadows, including the shadow on the shirt, and the coloring on the brick, as well as the brick. All right, select all of those layers in your layer palette and group them, Command G. And we'll call this model. Now let's bring our blank card JPEG into this file. We're going to have to unlock it from its own image and then click and drag it into the white brick wall JPEG. Bring that, click down, and then release it here inside the image. Let's go ahead and transform it to fit inside the image. So go ahead and hit Command T. And it can be just as tall as the image. I just didn't want any of it to disappear off the edge. All right, hit Enter. All right, so we're going to take a copy of this entire model group and we're going to fit it onto these cards. First things first, kind of like what we did with the model because their skin tone was a little more neutral from the photo shoot, let's brighten let's saturate the colors here in this background. So we'll go to our adjustments while we're on the layer with the blank cards with our hue and saturation. And we'll just pump in some saturation. Maybe a little, no, not lightness, don't do that. Don't do as I say, not as I do. And we'll hit OK. All right. I want you to select your model group just by clicking on that in your layers and duplicate it. Once you have done so, let's go ahead and move it up above our cards. And let's merge these together so we don't necessarily have a bunch of layers still. Go ahead and right click on your group icon, the one with the little folder, and we'll go down to merge group. All right, now you'll notice now we have one layer that includes everything that we've just done. Now don't do that to your original, you need your original. All right, keep that one with all of its layers. You're only merging the copy. So now we can hit Command T and shrink this down. We're going to fit it on the card. Now the card isn't straight forward to the camera, it's at a nice little angle. So we're going to have to use that free transform again using our Command key to kind of stretch it. All right. So let's go ahead and place just this first corner, this bottom left corner, kind of where it needs to be on the card. And then let's hold down our Command key while we start transforming, and we get the second corner, that bottom right corner, kind of aligned. And then start transforming the other corners using, again, holding down your Command key. You're going to have to go around most of the bounding boxes here and hold down Command after you click and drag them to fit them onto the card. All right, this is nice and easy because it's a flat surface. If it was a curved surface, we might need to get into like our liquify filter, etc. But since it's cards, it's going to be really friendly. When you're done using those transformations, that holding down Command while you grab sections of the bounding box to stretch it into place, go ahead and hit Enter. All right, so we have the top card now. Yay. We're going to mock in just the corners as they appear on these other ones. So let's get a copy of this one right here. We'll call this one top card. And this one we'll call card 2. And we'll just kind of work our way down since there's only 5 cards in our stack. So in card 2, go ahead and grab your card. And this time, we might just need to rotate it a little bit. Let's find out, since these cards are on the same horizontal. You don't need to stretch it so much. Go ahead and align it to that card number 2 so it has about the same size margins as you created on the first card, and then hit Enter. Now we're going to have to delete a bunch of the extra pixels because it shouldn't overlap the first card. I don't think this is necessarily a time when the pen tool is very useful because these paths are going to have to be straight and they're going to be just a simple triangle. So we can use our our Polygon Lasso Tool, or Polygonal Lasso Tool, and draw a shape around our pixels to delete all the stuff beneath the card. All right, so I just use my Polygon Lasso Tool to draw around those pixels and then hit my delete key to delete the pixels. So I hit Command D to deselect. I'm going to do that whole thing over again for card 3, 4, and 5. 4 and 5 we're going to see a little bit peeking out over here too, so we're going to have to get a little creative about these corners, okay? But let's do card 3 because that'll be the same thing as card 2. We'll again get a copy of our top card, and we'll call it card 3. We'll move this into place, kind of get the corner where we want it, and then rotate. I guess it doesn't really matter to have the corner where we wanted it. And then hit Enter. And we're going to get the Polygon Lasso Tool. That's hotkey L. And we will draw. Oh, so I've got a problem here where I don't quite know where my card is. I'm going to have to go ahead all the way over here to where I know it meets up behind card number 2 in order to draw that path. And we'll draw polygon all the way around those extra pixels and then hit delete. And Command D for deselect. All right, card number 4. Actually, I'm going to go back for just a second. I think nah. Ignore me for a second. Okay. Let's get again a copy of our top card. Name this card 4. And bring it here to the top. We are going to change the opacity on this one so we can see through because we have a corner to go around now instead of just a nice straight line. So let's change the opacity on this. We'll change it back to its normal full opacity once we're done. But now we'll transform it. Command T. Oh, you know what? Maybe it would have made sense is to actually keep some of this on card 2. That was my bad. Maybe you were smart enough. We'll go back and we'll replace it. Let's see. So here's card 4. I want to make sure that I rotate it correctly. And I'm going to need to resize it. You notice that my pixels are now extending beyond the card. So you're going to have to get into those transformations again, holding down your Command key. in order to fit it correctly onto that card number 4. All right, when you've got it all rotated and transformed, all stretched together, go ahead and hit enter. Let's do some obvious cutting away of pixels. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the shape of card 1 completely out of it. So I'm going to use my lasso tool all the way up here over the top. And make sure I'm coming in at the nice angle. And then we'll delete all that underneath there. Okay, so that's a nice start. And we know card 1 has been cut out of that card 4 information. Next, let's use what we know about card 2, this top right here. Actually, we could skip ahead to card 3. So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape to start my selection over again. Oh, I am having a hard time knowing where that pixel information is. So I'm going to change my opacity some more on this layer so I can see the card top. There we go, that's better. And then delete all that information. Change your opacity back up so you can see it again. All right, so we've deleted what we needed to out of the top and kind of right side of this card. What we're going to need to do is delete these 2 cards worth of information. This is where we're probably going to need our pen tool because we've got some curves to go around, and I never trust myself with my mouse to do a nice lasso that way. So let's turn off this layer for a second so we can see our cards really, really well. Let's go ahead to our paths, hit P for pen tool, and we will start drawing a path that includes the corners of these cards. Remember, so clicking gives you an anchor point. Clicking and dragging gives you handlebars. Holding down your Option key allows you to break those handlebars so you can turn corners or turn them. Okay. This is a very simple path, just a few anchor points. We just need to get those nice curves of the tops of the cards. All right, we will load that path as a selection. We will return to our card 4 layer, and then we can, on card 4, delete that. And you can see I've missed some pixels right here, so I'm going to just get those with that Polygon Lasso tool. And hit delete. Oh my gosh, we're so close. So close, and then we've got to repair that corner that we forgot. That I forgot. Sorry, I should own that. All right, again, we're going to need a copy of top card. We're so close. We're going to use transform. Oops, once we go ahead and scoot it over here where we want it. So Control T or Command T. We're going to have to squish it to fit onto that card. I'm just about done with my adjustments. Take all the time you need if you need to pause the video. And then hit enter. We'll move that up here. should have named it first, but not top card, card 5. We'll change that opacity down really far. So we can use our Lasso Tool, hotkey L. Let's get rid of a bunch of stuff right off the bat. We'll do another small path. Actually, we probably don't even need to do a small path around the corner. We might be able to just fudge this one. So I'm going to come over here and practice doing a bunch of itty-bitty little turns with my Polygon Lasso tool. Because we might get away with it that it's such a small area. All right, make that selection. I'm going to turn that up so I can see it change happening a little bit better. And then hit delete. And Control D for deselect. Yeah, I think that worked out pretty good. All right, so there's a couple areas that I messed up because I forgot that there were some cards sticking out. So let's go ahead and repair this corner here so it sticks out. This one, maybe on card 3, we'll find out. All right, so on card, we're gonna again get a copy of top card. We'll call this card 2, oops. And move that into place. Transform it. Now I'm not worried about how it lines up anywhere else but this corner. I mean, it needs to obviously share a nice linear line with the first copy of the layer. Hit enter, and then this is going to be an easy just Polygon Lasso tool cut. And we'll delete all that extra stuff. We just wanted the corner. Delete. All right, we'll do the same thing to card 3, just that itty bitty corner. So we'll get a repeat of top card. We'll call it card 3, oops. Yeah, this is why you always keep a nice copy of something around so that you can fix your mistakes. All right, Control T if you're on a PC, Command T if you're on a Mac. Free transform that into place. And then easy as pie, I'm going to use that Polygon Lasso tool to cut that. Okay, look, we'll even just grab this corner and then select the inverse, Command Shift and I, and then delete out all the extra stuff. I should have zoomed in a little bit more though, because look, I forgot some of the pixels. Could have done a slightly cleaner job of that. And I'll hit delete. All right, we're almost done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to change. Let's combine card 2 and card 2 oops now so that they're the same layer. So we're going to select both layers on the palette and merge them. We'll do the same with card 3 oops. And then we're going to change the blending mode of these layers to be multiply. There is some pixel information of the cards that I think it ought to be interacting with. We'll change it to multiply and then back it up just a little bit. Oh, nope, we're not going to back it up at all. Just go ahead and change all those to multiply so that they are interacting with the pixels beneath them. All right, we can group these. Actually, let's make sure to group them with the card. And we'll call this card example. All right, so now you have, within the same Photoshop document, the marketing material that your client might wish to show people, and the full image that they could use for websites, social media, etc., anything outside of print. All right. Thank you so much for participating. I'll see you in Photoshop Lab 5.